Working harder feels responsible. It looks disciplined. It earns respect. And it's the fastest way to make your body weaker. Because effort doesn't build resilience. It reveals whether you have any. You told yourself you'd handle it, get through the quarter, close a round, finish a launch. Then you'd fix it. That was 6 months ago, maybe 12. And the truth you won't say out loud is this. You're working harder than you ever have, and your body is still softer than it's ever been. Not because you're weak, because efforts stop working. If you've been increasing effort and watching your body go in the other direction, this episode is for you. Welcome back to Iron Suits. I am your host, Marwan Kidu. Welcome back to Iron Suits, where strength wears the crown. I am your host, Marwan Kidu. In the last episode, we talked about why discipline only works in stable environments, and why trying to force discipline in chaos breaks your body instead of building it. Today, we're going one level deeper. Here's a trap most high performers fall into. When results stop coming, they don't question the system. They increase effort instead. More training, more intensity, more sacrifice, less sleep, tighter food rules, because effort is the number one lever that's always worked. But your body doesn't reward effort. It responds to signals. And right now, the signal that you're sending it isn't strength, it's threat. That's why the man who works the hardest in the room is often the softest one in the mirror. It's not because they're lazy, but because he's lazy. It's because he's over signaling danger to a system designed to survive, not perform. And once you understand this, you'll never look at working harder the same way again. Effort feels like control, but in a stress system, effort is just another form of pressure. I look worse than the guys who don't even try. Let me say that again. Effort stopped working. Okay? The same force that built your business, that got you promoted, that closed the deal, it doesn't translate to your body anymore. And you know this. You've tried. You've pushed through fatigue. You've trained harder. You've restricted more. You've applied the same pressure that works everywhere else. And it failed. Not once, repeatedly. So now we're sitting with a quiet suspicion that something fundamental has changed. That rules are different now. That the physics of effort don't apply the way they used to. And you're right, they don't. Here's what happened. You spent 20 years learning that effort compounds. That if you just work harder, longer, smarter, you win. And in business, that was true. More calls, more clients, more leverage. But your body doesn't operate on the same economy. Your body operates on recovery, not repetition. On precision, not volume. On alignment, not aggression. At the moment you try to force it with the same rules that build your career, you break it. Let me show you where this starts. You have a deal that's falling apart. You're stressed. Sleep is 3, maybe 4 hours. You're living on cold brew and coals. So you tell yourself, I'll train anyway. Because discipline, right? Because you don't skip, because effort is the answer. Discipline is freedom, okay? As we talked about in the last episode. So you go to the gym exhausted, under-recovered, running on cortisol and caffeine, and you go through a session that your body has no capacity to absorb. You think you're being disciplined. You're actually compounding damage. Compounding damage. Effort without capacity is destructive. Let me say that again. Effort without capacity is destruction. I said destructive at the beginning. It's not destructive, it's destruction. Okay? And the problem is you can't feel it in real time because adrenaline masks the signal. Because your identity is tied to pushing through. Because stopping feels like losing. So you keep going. And 6 months later, you're weaker, softer, and more inflamed than when you started. And I've said it before in previous podcasts about the barbell complexes and the stupid amount of cardio that I've done, and spending an hour in the sauna and cutting out carbs. And the only way is you're pushing through, and everybody's like, yeah, you're made of hard stuff, you're working real hard. Except you look in the mirror 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you still look the same, despite putting more effort than anyone else. Eh? And eventually your body gives out. Eventually your body's like, no, I've had enough. Okay, I'm going to give you an injury. I'm going to give you something like it did with me, and stop training for a while. Okay? So 6 months later, you're weaker, softer, and more inflamed than when you started. Not because you didn't try, because you tried in a deficit. And here's the part that stings. The very thing that made you successful, your ability to override discomfort, to push past limits, to outwork the competition, that's the thing that's destroying your body now. You learn to ignore signals, fatigue, hunger, pain, because in business, signals lie. Okay? The deal always feels impossible until it closes. The launch always feels too early until it works. So you train yourself to stop trusting how things feel and start trusting that, what you can force. And it worked until it didn't. My assistant is in better shape than I am. Because your body isn't a negotiation. It doesn't care about your deadline. It doesn't care about your standard. It doesn't respond to willpower the way a team does, or a market does, or a competitor does. It responds to biology. And biology has non-negotiable terms. Here's what I mean. You can't outwork a hormone problem. You can't out-discipline chronic stress. You can't out willpower a nervous system that's been in fight or flight for 3 years straight. And yet that's exactly what you've been trying to do. You've been trying to solve a systemic issue with more pressure. It's like trying to fix a recession by working longer hours. It just doesn't work. Not because you're not capable, but because you're solving the wrong problem. Let me take you inside your head for a second. You're sitting at your desk. It's 9 p.m. You skipped lunch. Again, you're supposed to train in the morning, but the day got away from you. So now you're thinking, I'll go tomorrow. I'll start earlier. I'll be more disciplined. And underneath that, there's quite a thought. A thought you then say out loud. I used to be able to do this. I used to be able to handle more. What's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. You're just operating under a framework that no longer applies. You're treating your body like it's 25. Like it still has a recovery rate of someone who sleeps 8 hours, eats 3 meals, and doesn't carry a cognitive load of a company on their shoulders. But you're not 25. And your body isn't recovering like it used to. Not because you're old, but because you're under-resourced. Here's the difference. At 25, you can get away with chaos. You can skip meals, you can train fasted, sleep 4 hours, hit a PB, do it again. Your body has enough margin to, at 25, to absorb the deficit. But now, you're operating on thin margins. Your sleep is inconsistent. Your nutrition is reactive. Your stress is chronic. Your recovery is non-existent. So when you add training on top of that, you're not building, you're borrowing. And the bill always comes due. This is where most people double down. They think, I just need to try harder, more intensity, more volume, more restriction. Because in every other area of life, that's what worked. But here's the truth. Effort is not the constraint. Strategy is. But let me say that differently. You don't have an effort problem. You have a priority problem, a sequencing problem, a resource allocation problem. You're trying to build whilst you're still in a deficit. And you can't build in a deficit. You can only survive. Here's what that looks like. You decide you're going to get serious again. You hire a trainer, you buy a program, you commit. Week 1, you're all in. Training hard, eating clean, focused. Week 2, a crisis hits. A crisis hits, even. A client emergency, a team issue, something that demands your attention. So you skip a session, then another. Then the diet slips because you're eating in meetings. And by week 3, you're off the rails. Not because you're lazy, but because your environment is unstable. And effort collapses in unstable environments. I used to respect myself when I looked in the mirror. Effort collapses in unstable environments. This is the thing that no one tells you. Discipline works when conditions are controlled, when you have time, space, and predictability. But your life is not controlled. It's reactive, it's high stakes, it's volatile. And in that environment, effort is not enough. You need systems that survive, systems that function under pressure. You need frameworks that adapt to chaos. You need strategies that don't require perfect conditions to work. But instead, you keep trying to force the old model. The model that says, just work harder. Just be more disciplined. Just push through. And every time it fails, you internalize it as a personal failure. You think you're not committed enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not the person I used to be. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is you using the wrong tool for the job. You bringing a hammer to surgery and then wondering why precision is impossible. Here's a shift. Your body doesn't need more effort. It needs more intelligence. It doesn't need more volume. It needs more signal. It doesn't need more restriction. It needs more alignment. And the alignment requires you to stop treating your body like an employee you can demand more from and start treating it like a system you need to resource properly. Let me give you an example. So you train 4 times a week, hard sessions, high intensity, but you're sleeping 5 hours a night. You're skipping meals. You're running on stress hormones. So what happens? Your body can't recover from the training. It can't rebuild. It cannot adapt. Instead of getting stronger, you get weaker. Instead of getting leaner, you get softer. Because training is a stimulus, but growth happens in recovery. And you're not recovering. This is the part that breaks people. Because it means effort isn't the answer. And if effort isn't the answer, then what is? Strategy, precision, resource allocation. The same things you use to run your business. You don't just work more hours and hope for revenue. You allocate resources, you optimize systems, you measure what matters, you adjust based on feedback. And your body is no different. It requires the same level of strategic thinking, the same level of intentionality, the same level of precision. But here's the problem. You don't want to hear that because strategy requires patience. And this is the one thing that you don't have. You don't have patience. You want the results now. You want to see change this week. You want effort to equal outcome. And I get it because I used to be the same. And I get it because that's how it works everywhere else. But your body doesn't care about what you want. It cares about what you're capable of recovering from. And right now, you are not capable of recovering from what you're demanding of it. So let me ask you something. What if the issue isn't that you're not working hard enough? What if the issue is that you're working too hard in the wrong areas? What if the issue that you're spending effort without strategy, volume without precision, discipline without intelligence? What if the real problem is that you've been operating under a framework that no longer serves you? And instead of changing the framework, you've been blaming yourself for not executing it better. Because that's what this is. You're not failing. The model is failing. And until you accept that, you're going to keep running in the same loop. More effort, same result, more frustration. Here's what I want you to sit with. Effort is not a strategy. Discipline is not a system. And willpower is not a resource that scales. What worked at 25 doesn't work at 35. What worked when you were building doesn't work when you're operating. What worked when you had margin doesn't work when you're running at capacity. The rules changed and you're still playing by the old ones. That's not a character flaw. It's a misapplication of strength. But it's also a choice. You can't keep pushing harder. Or rather, you can keep pushing harder, or you can start building smarter. You can keep forcing effort, or you can start aligning strategy. You can keep treating your body like it's supposed to comply, or you can start treating it like it's supposed to be resourced. The effort trap is this. You believe if you just try harder, it will work. And because that belief has served you everywhere else, you can't let it go, right? You just can't let it go. Even when your body's telling you it's not working, even when the evidence is overwhelming, even when you're softer, weaker, and more exhausted than you've ever been. So here's a question. How long are you going to keep running that experiment? How long are you going to keep applying more pressure to a system that's already breaking? How long are you going to keep blaming yourself for frameworks that doesn't fit anymore? Because the answer isn't more effort. It never was. The answer is different effort, precise effort, intelligent effort. Effort applied at the right things in the right sequence with the right support. I'm afraid it's too late. And until you accept that, nothing changes. You'll keep grinding, you'll keep pushing, you'll keep telling yourself you'll handle it later. And later never comes. That's a trap. Not that you don't work hard enough, but because you can't stop, even when it's destroying you. And that's all for today. I hope this episode was helpful. If it does, make sure you share it with another leader, because that's how we spread the effort, as how we spread the word, not effort. And as I keep saying, as iron sharpeth iron, so one man sharpens another. Leave me a review on iTunes, good or bad. I'd love to hear from you. Make sure to follow me on my socials. I am on Facebook under Marwan Kilu, or LinkedIn under Marwan Kilu Fitness. You can even watch this on YouTube under Marwan Kilu. You can watch the show on YouTube. And make sure you subscribe to the show so you get a notification when a new episode goes live. Until then, have a great day. Talk to you later.